Amrish.
Thank you very much. Very happy to be here. Agonist. Now I'm talking on diet and osteoporosis, and I have to rush back to talk on oral antidiabetics and gestational diabetes. So that is the pleasure of being back home, because you can't say no. So that's why. So the thing is that we were talking about VIPs, sir, and I think I will just make one comment before I start my talk, because like all of you, I also deal with a lot of VIPs, and in my secretary's language, it means very irritating person. Okay, so let's try to be normal in our lives and not VIPs. We end up talking about just calcium and vitamin D, but this is a slightly broader view, and I think it's important that we understand this, because very often we don't talk about it. The biggest problem in modern medicine, like in the case of diabetes, is that we prescribe the medicine and think our job is done. So actually that is not correct. In most chronic care, the role of lifestyle measures is very important. Without preaching, without putting the patient down, it is very important for us to give the correct advice and gently coax our patient to come on the right every 2 years. But for that 2 years, everyone believes that this is the best diet in the world. And the other thing that, and I'm going to say this, some of you may not like it, we always believe our tradition was fantastic. तो हमें बहुत ज़रूरी है हम नवरात्र में खाएं, नवरात्र साबुदाना यूजलेस प्रोसेस्ड कार्बोहाइड्रेट। I'm just saying, टेस्ट की बात नहीं कर रहा हूँ। हमारा ट्रेडिशन क्या 100 साल का है, 500 साल का है, 1000। इंडिया जैसे देश का ट्रेडिशन तो 10,000 साल का भी पता नहीं कितना है। तो जिसको हम ट्रेडिशन आज बोलते हैं, वो कभी शुरू हुआ था और वो ट्रेडिशन हो गया। When I did some history on food research, some research on food history, I found that most of the food traditions we are following are not even 100 years old. जिसको हम बोलते हैं हमारा बहुत पुराना शुरू करता है कोई, वो ट्रेडिशन हो जाता है। सो इसलिए ट्रेडिशनल चीज़ों को क्या हम ट्रेडिशन मानते हैं, आपसे और आपसे सबका फर्क ट्रेडिशन है, सेम नहीं है। वी हैव टू गो बाय द साइंटिफिक मेरिट ऑफ दैट। इन आवर ट्रेडिशन वी हैव लॉट ऑफ गुड साइंटिफिक स्टफ, but we have to follow that and not blindly because that's how it has been. That is very important. सब चीजें वेस्ट के आने से खराब नहीं हुई हैं। समोसा कचौरी वेस्ट से नहीं आया। It's our thing. Okay. So what I am saying is we need to keep that in mind. But today, of course, I am talking on diet and osteoporosis. We sometimes think that calcium is like directly going to the bone and getting stuck there. It's not that simple. When we take less calcium, when we take poor dietary calcium intake, there is reduced calcium absorption, obviously less calcium. There is some reduction, minor reduction in plasma calcium, which will immediately stimulate PTH secretion. And you get a state of mild secondary hyperparathyroidism, right? That causes progressive bone loss. That's one way of looking at it. Calcium also has an impact on vitamin D. Vitamin D has an impact on calcium. That's a separate story. But the fact is that in addition to this, calcium may have an impact on neuromuscular junction, on your coordination, on your risk of falling. So yes, deficiency of calcium will make your bones weak. There is no doubt. We all know that forever. But it's not that वो calcium खाया और जाके चिपक गया. Basically, when you take less calcium, then there is increase in parathyroid hormone that drives the calcium out of the bone. There is enough data to show that dietary calcium intake correlates, but not too much calcium. So the curve is sort of flattened out around 1,000 milligrams per day. Of course, Western data. But so it's not that if you take 2 grams of calcium, you're doing something great. Same thing with vitamin D. Aajkal sab vitamin D, my younger colleagues and my students tell me I have unleashed a monster by so much propagating about vitamin D deficiency. People are using such high doses which I have never propagated, or no one has propagated. No guideline says that. So we have to be rational. इसका एग्जाम्पल मैं देता हूँ, ये थोड़ी ना कि हीमोग्लोबिन आप 18 कर लोगे तो बहुत फायदा होगा. You need 14, 15 hemoglobin, right? You don't need 18. So nutrition means appropriate amount, not excess, not less. That's very, very important. So again, just to explain, the fracture risk and osteoporosis is minimum when you are around 800 to 1,000 milligram of calcium intake a day. There is better data from Asian countries in this. And you know the answer why? Because calcium intakes in the West are already very good. In Australia, New Zealand, Northern Europe, in US, Canada, they're so good, you can't discern any difference. तो वो 1000 से 1200 करके कहते फर्क नहीं होता calcium secretion. Vitamin D को they will raise from 25 to 30 nanograms, say there's no difference. That is inapplicable to us. in countries like ours where calcium intake is so divergent, there increasing calcium intake to normal levels, optimum levels will make a difference. Okay? So when in Korea, for example, where they also have an issue with calcium intake, you see all the VMDs correlate with calcium intake. So there is an importance. Same thing in Japan, they went further. Lowest calcium intake had highest number of vertebral fractures. So I think that's important. But unfortunately, having said that, you don't know what is the optimum level. This is a big story. I'm not going to confuse you with that. For us to remember, a good rule of the thumb is close to 1000 milligrams. Okay, as close as we can reach to 1000 milligrams per day, diet plus supplement. Okay, so with just diet it is sometimes difficult. This is especially true of older people. It's not necessary that this calcium intake is maintained for people who are 35, 40. You can probably do with 500, for the no one knows the final answer there. But in growing children it's very important. And in postmenopausal women and older men, above 50 you can say, it's quite important. So try to maintain, you can see all the confusion, try to maintain calcium intakes 800 to 1000, as close to 1000 as possible per day. That itself is a huge achievement. The ICMR still recommends 600, but the truth is that we do not even achieve that. We did this survey with colleagues from all over the world. I was part of this. We did a global dietary calcium intake among adults. I reviewed all the data. And what we found was that, now look at this. These are the low intake countries. Here, India is pretty low. And these are the good intake countries. And you can see where they are. Right? Look at Northern Europe, look at US, Canada, look at USSR, look at Australia. So the red ones, the redder you are, the lower the calcium intake. So India is the average calcium intake by the government figures, NSSO, is about 429 milligrams per day. And that is average. There are lots who are at 100 milligrams. Whose only calcium intake may be the milk they take in their tea, nothing else. So that's all. That's how India is. So this is important to realize. There are many strategies, you can go to, I'll not go into this, but there are cereals which are richer in calcium than the ones that we use. So one of the dietary biodiversity is, for example, improving the different kinds of food that people take. We're already talking millets a lot. So we know that wheat and refined flour and rice, the kind of wheat we use these days is not the best. So even in this, when you have, so it's a mixed bag. However, we should try to improve our calcium intake even through this. Ragi is one exceptional source of calcium among all the cereals. Ragi has the highest calcium, so we should consider that. Not for tour, but I did some homework on this and calcium-rich Indian foods, and this is from Jharkhand, a paper from Santhal tribe in Santhal area of Jharkhand, where they found that some of the stuff they eat, which none of us eat actually has higher calcium. So just to give you an idea, one approach could be changing dietary habits, like from our own people, from our own resources, what dietary habits could be changed. But the most important, by far the overpowering, is milk. And one of the things we can be proud of in our country is our increase in milk production. Started early this, even before this actually, but around this time of year 2000, you can see how it has gone up. It's remarkable how well we have done in milk production. Remarkable. And this tallest bar is buffalo milk, next is cow's milk, and goat milk is at the bottom. So all are increased, and there is sustained, proves that when the government and stakeholders get together, they can achieve a lot. And in this case, we have done that. Still, I'm not showing all that. It's beyond the scope. That lot of discrepancy. It has gone up. A lot of it goes into milk products and the sweets and the stuff we eat. It's still not reaching everybody. It's still not reaching our rural children in many cases. It's still not reaching our slums. It is said that you cannot eradicate malnutrition from a country till milk is cheaper than coke. It has to be available to everybody like water. Only then we can get. Of course, we are not talking of lactose intolerance. One can discuss those things. Those are separate issues. Many of us may have lactose intolerance. Then you use different strategies, but then you can still use dahi. So calcium sources are from milk. There is no question. And these are just an example of in 100 grams how much calcium you have. So you have lots of calcium in 100 grams of dairy products which cannot be matched by any other source. So dairy is very, very important for us, for our bones. At the moment you're talking about osteoporosis. Then there are nuts. I took this from the net. There are flax seeds. You know, everything that you find is overall healthier is healthier also. It's not you have separate diet for osteoporosis, separate for diabetes, separate for the same kind. You use flaxseed, you will get some calcium also. So, alsi hai, jo bhi, you use those seeds and you will get additional calcium. But your primary source of calcium will remain dairy. It's impossible to achieve that kind of level of calcium that you would otherwise get. So dairy products have been shown, even full-fat dairy products have been shown to protect against fracture. I won't go into details. It has been clearly shown that the reduction in risk of the fracture, milk intake directly reduces fracture. There's so many studies on that. Now this is a picture that I took when I was traveling in the US. The important part is when they talk of dairy product studies, it is always vitamin D fortified milk. Very important. There is no vitamin D in our diet. There is no vitamin D in our diet. Because the media rival is here, no. There is no vitamin D in our diet. 3 times I will tell you. So please remember this. He was here. I was hoping to say this in front of him. Anyway, so there is no vitamin. So don't think ये vitamin, वो Western दिखाते हैं आपको फोटो, ये vitamin D sources, ये हमारे channels भी दिखा देते हैं. कहाँ है vitamin D? वो fortified होता है. बाहर से डालते तब होता है. इंडिया में शुरू हुआ है थोड़ा सा अभी आना fortification. There is some mother dairy milk is fortified, small amounts but nevertheless. So vitamin D नहीं होता. तो dairy products का result के लिए vitamin D अलग से देना पड़ेगा, right? There is a lot of data on this. But the important part is here that fermented milk products seem to be a particularly good source. Dahi seems to be a remarkable source, even better than milk in protecting from fractures. There is a whole theory, we don't have time to go into that. Just the calcium part is of course directly there, which we already discussed with milk. But there are also prebiotics, probiotics, changes in gut microbiota which improve absorption. Definitely protein content. Protein content is very, very important. It's not just calcium. So all these things make fermented dairy products protective against fracture. So that is a very, very important point, take home message here. What about protein? So we sometimes forget protein and then we say, you know, we were told when we were students, and Dr. JP Singh is here from my time, Indians का protein intake requirement इतना होता नहीं है, वो western diet कहाँ है? तो Indians क्या कम protein खा के Olympic medal जीत रहे हैं? हमारे cricketers की diet आपने देखी है, protein content कितना है उसमें? हमारे fast bowler ऐसे बन जा रहे हैं, जो अब हो रहे हैं वो इसलिए कि वो specifically high protein ले रहे हैं, बिना protein के नहीं होगा. अब बोलना कि नहीं वो हमारे diet में यही है, सिर्फ दाल चावल ही है, उसी से हम सब कर लेंगे, वो नहीं, ठीक है, तो जो कर रहे हैं वही करेंगे. So we need to increase our protein. Protein का भी dairy बहुत बड़ा source है, especially for vegetarians. And if you're non-vegetarian, you can have. This is of course from my recent visit to Hyderabad. This patthar kebab, that is halim, and that is methi chicken. If you like non-vegetarian, but it's not mandatory. If you don't like it, if you like eggs, eggs is a great source of protein. Eggs are a great source. Otherwise, dairy products, otherwise soya. I mean, there's so many options, but you have to work towards it. Every plate that you eat, every time you eat, you look, where is the protein in my plate? It's very important. Protein is important for everything, but now we're talking in context of fractures and osteoporosis. Quite clearly, a dietary protein intake of 1 to 1.2 gram per kg. High quality protein. Excuse me, आप सब चेक करिए जाके, किसी का नहीं, हम लोग को होते ही नहीं, बहुत ही मुश्किल है. So we need some shift in thinking about getting higher protein intakes. You know, so there is enough data to show that better protein intakes reduce bone loss. We leave that. What about other? So we've done calcium, vitamin D I just explained, of course protein. Vitamin K is very popular in the nutraceutical industry. I will just say something, it definitely has a role in bone metabolism. It clearly does have a role here via osteocalcin, but again I will not bore you with that. The thing is that supplementation of vitamin K is controversial because some studies, Japanese believe in it, Netherlands they believe in it, some countries do, but most countries don't. the ones who make up guidelines, they don't really believe that supplementing vitamin K is required, because what are the sources of vitamin K? The sources of vitamin K are still the same: dark leafy vegetables, kale, same. So it's all the antioxidants that you take. Along with that, you will get vitamin K. Whether taking extra vitamin K on top of that is a controversial subject. At the moment, we can stay out of that. We just talk about diet, so we'll just say no real need. Someone wants to take, you can take, but it's not proven that it does anything. Again about vitamin D, vitamin K2. Again vitamin K2, just I gave you the one line to remember. What about other nutrients? Other nutrients are also important. Same thing in normal health, no? Potassium, magnesium, vitamin C. For each of these, there is a mechanism of action on the bone. There are reviews which I have all deleted before the talk because there was no need to go into so much detail. But the fact is that these of our micronutrients have been shown to be important for bone health. But again, what do we take for that? We take lots of color, fruits and vegetables, right? And we take some potassium in nariyal pani type of thing. So those are the basics that nutritionists will always tell you, but we don't follow. As I was saying there in the other hall, half your plate has to be full of vegetables. Maybe some fruits if you're not a diabetic. Right? Quarter has to be protein. Only a quarter should be seafood. Then we can work towards improving our overall health and in particular bone health. Again, this picture was taken by me in Thailand where I was last month. So just saying that, there's nothing magical about diets for osteoporosis. It's very basic. The only difference is we have to ensure adequate protein, which we do for everything. And in this case, we have to ensure adequate calcium. That's really important, and in practical terms, that's the only way. When you see, you can't read this, you see dietary patterns that show less intake of protein and calcium clearly helps you to reduce risk of fracture, whereas pure vegan diets, which have less protein and all, is a challenge. I mean, whether you like it or not, I can't help it, that's the data, right? So there are multiple things about diet and osteoporosis. The take-home message should be, it's very important to ensure adequate calcium intake. Very important to ensure adequate vitamin D, which you will not get from food, by and large. As we get more and more fortified food, we can get more from food. Very important not to forget protein. Actually, if you ask me, even these three messages are good enough. And the last will be antioxidants and minerals, which we in any case say have more vegetables than fruits. उतना ही है बस. तो ये अलग से कोई specific diet नहीं है, लेकिन ये point emphasize करना जरूरी है patient को या किसी को भी normal older many of us in the old age do, to have enough calcium and protein in our diets. I think that's really important. This is the way it acts. If you have proteins through cheese or through fish, vitamin D through the sun. All the minerals through green vegetables. That's what you need for your bone. So there was a program in Canada which I had occasion to see where children were being taught about osteoporosis, bone health. And they were all wearing stickers and bookmarks and everything saying, I drink milk and I play in the sun. So you've got exercise for bone health, you've got sun for vitamin D, and you've got milk for calcium and protein. That's what we need. And this is really, really important in the growing adolescent phase, which is when most of our bone is formed. So you're building your bone bank only till about 20 years of age. After that, you're just preserving or losing. Right? So if you get in more calcium into the bone at that stage, then you can, reap the benefits all through your life. But nevertheless, having said that, once you're in Kanpur, don't miss the small pleasures of life. So there is no fun. I cannot come to Kanpur and not have malai makhan or daulat ki chaat or whatever you call it. Thank you very much.
As you all know, that he emphasized about we should take enough calcium, mostly from the food. We try to take it from the food. Proteins, if vegetarian, then of course milk, cheese, or non-vegetarian, then meat, fish, or by egg. And green leafy vegetables, which are very important source of vitamin K and other minerals, and all this with sunlight. Active exercise in the old days, that will suffice.
Thank you.
Thank you
very much. And other thing is, we more and more through diet, so that less and less need for supplements. The controversy is only about supplements. Otherwise, there is no controversy about dairy.
Thank you, sir, for a wonderful talk and informative talk. So one thing I'd like to know, does probiotic, which changes the microbiota of the intestine, what is the rule and what is your recommendation as an entrepreneur, how it should be given in a regular basis per year or what, in case of deficiency?
Yeah, so I think it's a very interesting and evolving field. So there's no way I can say at the moment that you take probiotics routinely, no. But if you take, for example, if you take fermented milk, you're getting everything you need. Dahi agar aap lete hain, dahi matha, then you're getting everything. But supplements, I'm not one to be crazy about supplements, except for vitamin D, which you don't get in that,
Sir, I'm an orthopedic surgeon.
Yes.
I wanted to ask two questions. One, if we take regularly calcium or vitamin D, does the gut stops absorbing in that proportion? Make the habit of not absorbing to that level, or
not true?
Not true.
Okay, so there's a little nuance in what you are saying. When you are calcium deficient, calcium absorption is very rapid. Moment you replace. Right? When you, supposing I am deficient in calcium, vitamin D, or maybe I have osteomalacia, and I start taking calcium, vitamin D, it will go up very fast. After some time, it will just remain like a steady state. Then it will not go on increasing. That's what it means. But you don't have to give gaps, no. You don't have to give, you can give them continuously. There is no reason to give intermittently. You just continue.
So as we say that the vitamin D is also required every day, of course,
yes.
That much of the sun we cannot take practically because of the lifestyle. So we take additional vitamin D.
So ideally, especially in the vulnerable age group, we should, and especially in winter, we should be taking about 2000 IU vitamin D daily. So if you want to be conservative, you can go to 1000, but 1 to 2000 daily is what is recommended. The sachet you get is 60,000. That's what I was saying, those sabutas. So 1 to 2000 per day is what we should be taking.
Everyday dose is better than...
Yes, slightly better. Slightly better.
Second, to improve the bone health, how do you rate the weight-bearing exercises?
That's very important. There will be a separate talk. Yes, weight-bearing exercises are very, very important. Yes, for both bone and muscle health. And muscle health influences bone health influences muscle health. You know that. So they are very important. Weight-bearing exercises.
I think low-impact exercises.
Well, if you have osteoporosis, it's different. So we have prepared an exercise book with the help of Rajesh Malhotra, who was who's not a several years ago, where we graded who can do what exercises. But if you have osteoporosis, then you have to be careful about it. But if you are just doing it for bone health, then you can do any exercise.
Thank you so much.
Can I ask? So, sir,
I have another talk. If they are okay, I'm okay.
just one small question.
Yeah.
Typically, we talk about supplementing calcium in osteoporosis.
Yes.
And at that time, also the risk of cardiovascular diseases. So, is there a relationship in terms of calcification and because data is very controversial?
Yes.
And should we actually supplement calcium in postmenopausal women, or if they are at risk of CVD, we should?
So I think that's a very important question. I was hoping to get time to discuss that, but there was no time. So CVD risk with calcium is not believed by most people, number one. The data is primarily from New Zealand, Australia. Meta-analysis from other places haven't shown that. And again, New Zealand, Australia already have a good calcium intake. And then they had a policy of giving every postmenopausal woman calcium. So there is a problem there. So I'm not surprised that they find all these things. So excess of anything, as I said, as you know very well, is bad. So you should try and get the maximum you can from diet. But if some postmenopausal woman who is at risk is not getting that amount, which is very likely, adding 500 mg calcium is not going to increase the risk of cardiovascular disease, even if she has some. So it's not that people who have CVD can't take calcium, they have to.
Thank you so much.
Sir, we can take later on question answers, we can take later on.
Sir, I have a lecture on this different topic.
One question, very short question. Role of injection Nemluvio in osteoporosis.
पूरा चैप्टर है वो आप जब चाहे उसमें लेक्चर 3-4 लेक्चर देते रहे पे अभी क्या करेंगे एक लाइन थोड़ी आंसर है उसका इट्स अ वेरी गुड ड्रग Very useful drug, anti-resorptive, very powerful drug to be given 6 monthly, 60 milligrams subcutaneously, and it's a very useful drug for preventing both vertebral and hip fractures, no question.